Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the very first Where in the World podcast. I'm so excited that you've decided to join me today. Today is going to be super fun because I have a really good friend of mine here over in Peace Corps Armenia, another volunteer, and he's going to get you excited about traveling to places kind of unknown. You know, he lives in Alaska, and he's going to talk a bit about growing up and living in Alaska, his transition over to working in Armenia, and most importantly, he's going to discuss working and living abroad while being in a committed relationship. And that is a topic of interest. I know a lot of people talk about, they tend to think that if they're in a relationship, it kind of hampers their ability to go abroad, which maybe it does in some instances, but in Alex's case, you're going to find out how him and his fiance have coped with the distance and have made it a very positive experience. But for the very first podcast, what we're going to do is talk about a topic. And I'm going to continue to do this for all of my podcasts because I think having a topic that these conversations can kind of flow around will make it easier not only on the guest speakers that I have and will allow them to focus in on a specific interest, but it also allows for you, the listeners, that if you ever have a question about a specific topic, it's going to make it way easier. You can kind of follow in on that podcast if you're interested in it, and then shoot me an email at whereintheworldismatt@hotmail.com, and I'll definitely get back to you with a follow-up answer. So for this very first podcast, because we're in January, the first month of the year, I would like to do a topic focused around kind of New Year's resolutions, but a little bit of a different twist. Now, this is something that I heard on another podcast, and instead of doing a resolution, we're going to talk about a New Year's word or a New Year's topic that you are going to focus in on throughout the entire year. Now, for example, the word that I've chosen to follow with is persistence. And I'm going to talk a bit more about persistence and how that focuses in on my upcoming year serving in the Peace Corps, living in Armenia, and the work that I'm doing here. But as you're listening, hopefully you can kind of start to get an idea of how maybe having this theme throughout the entire year is a lot more of a manageable goal to help you achieve the things that you want to do throughout the entire year. So again, my word for the year is persistence. That's something that I'm going to continue to think to myself as these challenges arise, as I continue to learn language, and honestly, as I start to develop this podcast, because it's going to take a lot of persistence on my part to continue to develop effective and influential content that I think that you all will enjoy. And on top of that, it's going to be persistence on my part to make sure that I am continuously posting at a specific time. So if you're interested on this podcast and you'd like to continue to follow it after this first episode, my current plan is to continue to develop a brand new podcast once a month on the first Friday of every month. Now, obviously, I'm kind of getting away from that because I'm posting in the middle of January, but the reason for doing so this month is because I just returned from a trip from the United States. So after this podcast has been released, I will then continue to post new content the first Friday of every month. So you can expect that to start in February and throughout the entire year. Now, that can change. Don't get me wrong. If I find that I have a lot more interviews that I can do, or if there's, topics of interest that you guys shoot to me through my email or are texting me or just or I'm thinking of, then maybe we can start to get a bit more of a consistent podcast going. But to start, it's going to be more of a once a month type of thing with a focused topic each time. And then hopefully I can have different people to talk to kind of give different perspectives on that type of topic. So as I was talking about this week, for the very first podcast, we're talking about themes for the new year. and things that you can focus in on as our years start to develop. And before we get to that, and before we get to my interview with Alex, just a little bit of background on me for those who maybe don't know me on a personal level, who are learning about me for the very first time. This is my opportunity to kind of let you guys know who I am, what I do, and what I hope to accomplish. So, my name's Matt, and I am the creator of whereintheworldismatt.com, and I also have a Facebook page under the same name, Where in the World is Matt, on Facebook. And what I do is travel. And traveling has become a big hobby. Now, where did that kind of start? So I attended a small liberal arts college in Iowa, and that is my home state. So I didn't make it too far out of state for the first couple years of my life. But I went to school in Iowa, did a 5-year undergraduate degree in education with focuses in physical education and health, with a minor in instructional strategist 1, which is a 512 degree for working with individuals with disabilities. So I went through that program, and as I was going through, I found this interest in wanting to do study abroad programs. So I ended up doing my very first study abroad program my sophomore year of college, and I went to Australia. And in Australia, I did some untraditional classes that weren't related to my degree very much, but it was something that I thought would be interesting to do, especially being there and learning about a new culture. I thought it was really interesting to kind of tie that component of my life into my education. So I ended up taking an Aboriginal Studies course and then an Australian Histories course while I was there, and none of those credits ended up transferring back for my degree, but that was okay because I got to live in Australia for 8 months. But during that time, when I was learning about the Aboriginal culture, that was my very first time kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone, learning about different cultures. And I just thought it was so interesting, especially when it came to comparing Aboriginal culture to the Native American culture here in the US. So transitioning back from Australia, and that interest in Native studies, I ended up taking on a program called the Kalapati Fellows at my university, and I carried out a 3-month-long research project living up in Newtown, North Dakota, living on an Indian reservation. And for this project, I worked with a local community college to do language and historical cultural preservation. And living up on the reservation, again, it was like kind of this mild stepping stones in my life. That was my first time that I actually got to live away from home in an environment that was completely different from that I had grown up in, integrating myself into a more traditional culture where it's very deep rooted. It's not European influenced, was super interesting. And the fact that I got to live in a traditional mud hut, it was awesome. It was so cool. So fast forwarding through college, I mentioned I did my first study abroad sophomore year. I ended up going on to do 2 more study abroads throughout my undergraduate, and I studied abroad with this program twice called Semester at Sea, and I'll put in my really quick pitch for Semester at Sea. Semester at Sea, absolutely amazing program. You can check them out online. Just go to Google Semester at Sea, and I believe it's semesteratsea.org if you want the direct link. But they are a program that is currently based out of Boulder, Colorado, and the University of Colorado State. And they have this unique global component to their study abroad program that's unlike any other program that you can do. They allow you to take classes while traveling around the world on a cruise ship, which is super interesting because what does a program like this offer? One, you're living on a ship, which is very untraditional from your standard study abroad programs. 2, it attracts a very diverse community from all over the world, and you're going to get students from all parts of the world, not just the US. So you're having, in general, about 600 students who are making up that student population, where about a fifth of that population is not from the US. So it makes for really deep-knit conversations, especially to the fact that there's hardly internet on the ship unless you're close to ports. So you're forced to make conversation and talk with people and to start to share those different ideas and interests of cultures. And that was honestly the best part about the program. But while you are studying on the ship, traditionally you'll take 4 courses, but each course requires you to have a global component. So how they accomplish this global component is each course will have you do a 1-day field lab in a designated country that your professors decide to choose. So for example, the very first time I did semester at sea, I was taking an environmental science class, and we did some water sampling at a waterfall in Trinidad and Tobago. I also did a public health course where we were in Morocco, and we ended up touring a hospital and got to see some of the different facilities and opportunities that their health system had to offer the people in Morocco, specifically in Casablanca where we were at. But usually you will travel to about 10 to 12 different ports in different countries throughout the course of a 4-month normal semester duration. So that alone allows you to hit way more countries than you would on any other study abroad opportunity. And it also gives you this opportunity, like I said, to share those experiences with a very diverse group of people that you most likely have not met prior to the program. So through semester at sea, I've made some of my closest friends that I continue to keep in contact with until this day. And it has given me this network that reaches all the way around the world. So I feel like really I can go pretty much anywhere and always have a friend at that place, which is an absolute amazing feeling because it helps you to feel way more connected to the people. So there's my bit for semester at sea. Like I said, I did that twice, and that's how I ended up doing a lot of my different traveling opportunities. I ended up reaching a little over 20 of my 31 current countries visited through the semester at sea program, which is awesome. Now, the downside, it depends what kind of traveler you are, because on average, I spent about 4 to 6 days in each country. So it's pretty whirlwind experience. You really have to pick and decide what it is that you want to get out of it. But I will say that it has given me kind of this introduction to what cultures are like in various countries, and I feel like I have a real grasp on if I wanted to go back to some of these countries for a much longer duration. I'm thinking like a month or more, or like I'm doing right now, working abroad. I definitely have an idea of those countries that I'm more interested in, and I like that idea because it allowed me to go and see different countries. And even if I didn't like a specific place, I knew there was an end coming quickly. But I still had the opportunity to travel to these countries and do things of interest. So that was a lot of fun. And if you guys have more questions about the Semester at Sea program, again, go ahead and shoot me an email at whereintheworldismatt@hotmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you and go more in depth about that program. I think it was such an incredible opportunity in my life, and it definitely had a huge impact on where I'm going now. So after college, currently I am doing a 2-year service with the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps is a government program, and it has a lot of cool things to offer you because the Peace Corps for college graduates has an opportunity for you, one, to forgive some of your student loan debt, which is something that I am doing while serving. It has frozen, on a personal level, has frozen some of my loans, so I'm not accruing that interest while I'm working abroad. And it's given me an opportunity to pursue a couple of things of interest where I get to live and work in a different country. I'm doing a job of personal interest, and it has given me a lot of flexibility to implement things that I enjoy doing on a more personal level. So my official job title here in the Peace Corps is a community and youth development volunteer. And the Peace Corps has 7 different areas that you can work under. And those areas differ depending on the various countries. So here in Armenia, where I'm serving, we have 2 options. You can either be a TEFL volunteer, which is teaching English to foreign learners, or community and youth development. And In most community and youth development settings, we are working in NGOs within communities, volunteering to provide opportunities for both the community and youth. There's two different ways that it typically goes, either organizational development or youth development, depending on what capacity that org is needing at the time. So in my case, I do a lot of youth development. Most of my work is after school programming. I am currently writing a small grant to get the first tap dance program started here in country, and also to help fix up the local performing arts school that we have. And like I mentioned, it's given me the opportunity to do things of interest because people who know me know that dance is a huge part of my life. No matter where I go, that's kind of one of the things that I always bring with me is my tap shoes, because tap dancing is a way for me to kind of free myself, to express myself, and it's kind of a unique dance that a lot of different cultures aren't familiar with, but they always take interest in when I'm able to show them it. So that's one thing that I'm super excited that I've been able to bring here to Armenia and to start teaching a little bit, and hopefully to start growing it at a larger capacity here in my community. But I also do some teaching of English here. Again, my job as youth development is kind of assessing the needs of what the youth are needing. And here in Armenia, they are trying to implement more of an English curriculum into the school setting. So I'm more than happy to get involved with something like that and to do some after school English lessons with students, which is a lot of fun. So, as I mentioned, we have a really cool volunteer that I'm going to be talking here with a few minutes. And his name is Alex. Alex is from Alaska, but I don't want to give away too much. But he's going to talk with us a little bit about growing up in Alaska, being engaged while living and working abroad, and then some of the work that he has going on with the Peace Corps, and then maybe some other projects that you might be interested in. So go ahead, sit back, relax, and thank you for joining us on the very first edition of the Where in the World podcast. I'm so excited for this. All right, I'm here today with Alex Rearick, a fellow Peace Corps volunteer, Alaskan native, and no, he's not an Eskimo, and a nature photographer. So we got quite a bit to talk about today, and I'm super excited about it. Alex, thank you for being here today. How are you doing?
Good, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So the theme, as I mentioned earlier today, was we are focusing on like New Year's resolutions or themes. And this whole concept idea was something I heard on another podcast, the Zero to Travel podcast, which I would definitely recommend. That was kind of the podcast that got me interested in wanting to do this type of thing. And this one of his episodes that he had was talking about these different themes, because a lot of the time we're coming up with these different resolutions that aren't always sustainable, or it's just a really quick, like one-time type of fix thing. And I think the beauty about doing a theme allows you to kind of create this reoccurring thing throughout the entire year that you can just mentally think to yourself, all right, what am I doing? And to give you an example, my theme for this year is persistence. And the reason why I bring that up is because, as you guys know, I'm over here in Armenia doing work with the Peace Corps, as is Alex, and we will get to talking more about that later. But I think persistence is a really key word, especially in regards to my service, because there's going to be so many times where I'm going to have to overcome obstacles, whether it's language barriers, whether it's working with my counterpart, what have you. But there's going to be those cultural and work differences that I'm going to have to keep reminding myself that, you know what, I'm here for a good cause, and I truly believe that. And keeping that word in the back of my mind is going to help me to especially accomplish the things that I really want to do this year. So, Alex, I am going to get to you at some point, and you'll have some time to think about it during the duration of this podcast, but maybe think of something that that you're looking forward to this new year? Maybe you don't even have a theme, and that's okay. But like that thing that you're kind of thinking, all right, 2019's here. What do I want to do? Especially now that we're so early in January, now's the time to start acting on that. But as I mentioned earlier, you grew up in Alaska, and I would love to start there because I think it's a really interesting place. I've never been to Alaska. I've actually had family that lived up in the Anchorage area. And Alex is laughing because there's a really funny story behind that, but I don't know if we'll get to that today. But I'm just interested, like what was growing up in Alaska like? Because I'm sure it's very different from living in the mainland 48 states. So let's start there.
Yeah, growing up in Alaska was a really interesting experience. Something you don't really realize how unique it is until you get out of Alaska. A lot of time was spent camping, fishing, hiking, but I think maybe the biggest difference that I've noticed with people that I've talked about that have lived in the lower 48 is just spending as much time outdoors and how connected people in Alaska are with the outdoors compared to those that live in bigger cities or down in the States.
So yeah, I mean, Alaska is definitely a very natural, beautiful type of place. And you mentioned like fishing and stuff like that. So do you have any like really good like childhood memories, either with your parents or with friends? I mean, it's kind of your opportunity to really sell people on Alaska and to talk about it because, obviously we know it as a state, and we know of it especially for like the crab fishing that takes place up there and the oil that's present. But I know there's so much more. So kind of give us the rundown on like, maybe your average day in Alaska, maybe a story that really sticks out in your lifetime, and yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot of Alaskans have are pieces of land that they build cabins on out in the wilderness. And my father owns a piece of land about a couple hours north of Anchorage, where I grew up, on a little lake called Carpenter Lake. We'd go there at least once a summer growing up just to go camping. We'd take the canoe out, fish for grayling in the lake there, sometimes some dollies. And really whenever I think about that place, Carpenter Lake, what sticks out to me is when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, we were out there camping, and my dad had suggested that we go out the next morning at sunrise to watch the sun come up on the lake. So we did just that. We woke up pretty early. Sunrise in the summer in Alaska is kind of weird because it doesn't really set, it just kind of dims. So we got up around 7 a.m. when the sun was really starting to peek back over the horizon. And we go out on the lake. It's a cool morning, and there had been a layer of fog that had settled on the lake that morning. And it just so happened that loons also tend to nest along the shores of this lake. And so as we paddled our canoe out to the middle of the lake, the fog was so thick that the loons weren't able to see us. And what they were doing is they were calling around us, probably just 20, 25 meters from our canoe. And it was just a really peaceful, really beautiful morning out there on the lake before the sun hit it and burned off the fog. And that's probably one of my earliest memories I had of like really having a intense feeling and passion towards being outside, being in nature.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I am sure fishing is very different up there, especially during the summer months, because I know most of the fishing that I usually do is during the winter months. I usually go up to Canada, and when my grandpa was still alive, we like to go ice fishing. So I'm sure probably a lot of the same things. Do you guys go ice fishing during the winter at all, or is it is it way too cold for you to do anything like that?
Yeah, I've gone ice fishing quite a bit, I'd say. I remember doing it with my uncles growing up, just going and sitting out on the lake for a few hours, hoping something bites. Usually nothing does. But it's still fun to get out there in the middle of winter and not feel trapped inside by the cold weather and the darkness. My last job that I worked was as a life skills instructor. And every year during our winter break camp, we'd take the kids out onto lakes and we'd have organized ice fishing with nice warm tents to sit in and everything. So it's something pretty common in Alaska. And I think just about every Alaskan has gone through that rite of passage.
So I know one of your favorite things to do, because I've fortunately been able to experience this as well. Over here in Armenia, Alex and I, we like to go hiking quite a bit because it's a very mountainous country, a lot of different terrain to conquer that honestly a lot of people haven't gone and seen. A lot of the back parts of Armenia have some beautiful mountain ranges that just don't get trekked very often. So I'm curious to hear, over in Alaska, when did you learn that hiking was something that you were pretty passionate about? And maybe what's a hike or what's a range that really sticks out in your mind, and what makes it so special to you?
I think what really, I guess you could say, it called me to the mountains, or however you want to put it. But in middle school and high school, the house that I lived in is actually situated at the base of a mountain, and it was about a 10-minute drive to a parking lot. And then from there, you could hike up. Took about an hour to get to the top, and it was maybe 1,000-foot climb. But it was a really cool vista that you had at the top there of looking back into the Chugach Range and then out into Cook Inlet that surrounds Anchorage. And in high school especially, when I was able to start driving on my own, me and my friends would do that hike quite often. And I think just getting up there and seeing how much there is to explore is what kept me coming back. And I have to say that my favorite range that I've been able to hike in is up in the Sierra Nevadas near Lake Tahoe. I don't know what it is about those granite peaks, but hiking through the hot air, you got soft sand under your feet, beautiful smell sights with the pine and the old growth up there. I always want to go back to the Sierra Nevadas to hike.
Yeah, it sounds super beautiful. And if that didn't sell you, I'm definitely sold. I'm going to have to get to Alaska sometime soon after my service, because hearing about these mountain ranges, I'm totally interested to come and see what Alaska's all about. Probably come in the summer months, yeah, because I understand the winter gets pretty cold. What does the winter hiking, how does that differ from the summer? Because I know we talked about it. You said there's really only 2 seasons in Alaska, and there's this weird pass in between the two. So what does that weather do to the people? What does that mean for what you're packing for when you're going to these mountain ranges? How does that all differ?
Yeah, the hiking from summer to winter is definitely a challenge. When winter settles in, usually October, November at the latest, it starts to get dark in Anchorage. You got about 6 hours of good daylight. So sometimes you go to work and it's dark, and you come home from work and it's dark again. And that darkness can really get to a lot of people. So I think Alaskans, especially in Anchorage and Fairbanks, the bigger areas, they're all about getting out and exercising and not feeling like they're too cooped up, trying to avoid that cabin fever. But as far as the hiking goes, I think a lot of the main trails stay used and open. I'm thinking of one in particular called Flat Top, which is a 30-minute drive from downtown Anchorage to the trailhead. And you can go up and down that literally any time of the year. there's always a trail that's packed down. Usually the big difference is you wear an extra layer and you prepare to slide down the snow on your butt instead of hiking down, which can make the hike a little bit more interesting and a little quicker too, at least for the descent part.
Yeah. So it's not hard to understand why, but one thing I really want to get into talking about now is photography, because I've seen a lot of the work that you've produced, and what I'll end up doing is on this link, I'm going to also post a link to your Facebook and your Instagram pages, so that the people listening to this podcast can go ahead and check out some of the work and maybe even get in contact with you. But a lot of the photography that you like to do is of nature, which, like I said, isn't hard to understand because Alaska sounds so gosh dang beautiful. So when did photography start to come into like when did that become an aspect of your life, that was something that you found that was a hobby you enjoyed doing and you continue to do to this day?
So I first picked up photography when I was in high school. I played with it a little bit back then. And I remember what kind of flipped the switch for me is I had gone on a road trip with my parents and some family friends to Seward, which is about 2.5, 3 hours south of Anchorage on the Kenai Peninsula. And it was a really gloomy day, and we had gone out to the end of the road at Miller's Landing to go camping. And we were walking along the beach out there, and I had taken a picture of one of the rocks. It's on the far right side of the beach. If you've been to the beach on Miller's Landing in Seward, Alaska, you know what I'm talking about. But I took a picture of that rock, and when I got it developed, because I was shooting with a film camera, when I got it developed, my parents were kind of up in arms about it. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for always being supportive. But they kind of suggested that I enter it into the Alaska State Fair, and I ended up getting second place with that photo that year. And I felt like that was kind of the motivation I needed to really pursue photography. It wasn't until Christmas 2010 that I bought my first DSLR, really with the goal and the idea of, I love hiking and I love getting out in nature, so why not have some mementos to bring back with me. And then it's really been in the past maybe 4 years that I've started to get serious about my photography. I upgraded my camera a few years back. Was able to take that on a few really epic hikes. So it's something that always kind of gives me a reason, not that I really need one, to go hiking more. But it's cool to be able to go out there and see these beautiful sights and then bring something back with me to show other people.
So I'm thinking especially in regards to like the hiking, because hiking is, again, like we talked about, a big aspect of your life, and incorporating that into the photography. What is your go-to camera? Because, when I think of like the really good photographers out there, they're hauling all these, big lenses. And honestly, I don't know all of the technicalities of photography. That's not my specialty, but I'm interested to hear what do you usually bring with you for getting those crisp, clean photos of these beautiful mountain ranges that, otherwise it's just impossible to almost explain.
So for the first 6 years, I was taking photos on a DSLR. I was shooting with a Canon Rebel T1 with just a standard 18 to 55 millimeter lens. And eventually I decided that I was ready to take things a little bit more seriously, and I upgraded. Still was photographing on a budget. So I now use a Canon 70D, but I have gotten a few extra lenses that I like to bring with me. I have a 70 to 300 millimeter to get those the nice stacking you see when you shoot mountain ranges or rolling hills. And then I also have a 24 millimeter and actually just got a 10 to 22 millimeter to get more of the big wide open shots. Besides that, I always say it's a numbers game. You take enough photos and eventually a few of them will turn out all right. So that's usually what I aim for.
Yeah, that was something I ended up learning a while back was it's better to take more photos than few too many, because chances are you're going to go through 100, 200, whatever you're shooting with to get that one photo that you're actually looking for. And that was the frustrating thing, because I know I've had, plenty of experiences in the past doing some of my backpacking and traveling trips abroad. And I just shoot on a very standard digital camera. It's a Canon. Otherwise, the iPhones have honestly a pretty good quality, but it's not the same as like connecting with the camera, working with the lenses to get that crisp photo. But yeah, I definitely recommend taking more photos than you need, because in the past, I've actually had issues with SD cards and have lost a lot of the photos that I wish I would have had more options to keep from. But that brings me to a kind of a funny, or at least I think it's funny. You probably don't think so, but we a couple months ago tried to trek to the tallest peak here in Armenia, Mount Aragats, and I know you had a bit of an issue with your SD card. You mind kind of filling us in on that one?
Yeah, bringing back the old demons. So I don't know why I made this stupid mistake, but I only brought one SD card with me when we decided to go out on that hike. Sometime between my village and making it to where we were meeting up before starting the hike, the little lock switch on my card had broken, which means I couldn't put any more data onto that SD card. So I went 3 days hiking in a pretty remote part of Armenia and not being able to take a single photo. And that was a little bit heartbreaking. It took me at least half a day to get over that.
He says half a day, but we were still making jokes about it, and he was still pretty salty about a month after. So, yeah, there's still a little bit salt stuck in the wound, I'd say. But I guess another good tip is to bring more than one SD card. Yeah. Yeah, another good tip. So take more photos than you need. And if you're trying to do that, you're probably going to want more than one SD card, especially if one's going to break on you, because then you're really screwed. Yeah. But, the thing is, you still walk away with those memories. And I can understand it's probably, as a photographer, seeing it through, quote unquote, that lens. It's probably frustrating walking away from a hike like that, not having a photo to show, but you still have that memory. And it was such a killer hike. Like we passed through everything in like those 2.5 days, because there was a group of 5 of us who went, and a lot of that trek was kind of unknown. Like you're checking the various hiking apps to see the trails, and here in Armenia, it's chances are it's not very accurate. So day 1 or night 1, we ended up encountering a huge hailstorm that just completely wrecked us. We were so defeated already, stuck at a pretty high elevation. I think it was maybe 8,000 feet above sea level, approximately. We had stopped at a lake, and we were stuck. It was kind of like, all right, do we go back, or literally at the time thinking, well, we have about the same distance and we just keep going up and head over. But the joke was on us, because then again, running into that unknown terrain, we ended up hitting a boulder field that pretty much slowed us to a crawl, and ended up getting stuck in the middle of this boulder field because it happened to be nightfall, and we're on the absolute wrong side of the mountain, because it's sending all the weather our direction. And we ended up getting quite a bit of snowfall that iced over that night while we were stuck in this boulder field. And I remember practically tearing the tent apart just to get out because it was caked with ice on top of it. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe your SD card would have even survived those conditions, right? Maybe you were fortunate you didn't bring it. Who knows? But so we'll transition into another topic because see you, John. That's the fun about shooting in the office is that you never know who's going to stop by, and we just had another volunteer passing through. He's like, "Oh, I got to be quiet." It's like, we really don't care. We're not very professional here. But talking on Armenia, and this is probably something of huge interest, especially if anyone out there listening is interested in doing the Peace Corps and is in a committed relationship. I know, or just traveling in general. I know that's one thing that's always on people's mind is, can I go abroad? Can I do these travel experiences? Can I work overseas while being in like a very serious relationship? And I think no one better to talk about it than Alex, because Alex has been in quite a long relationship with a girl that he met who's also from Alaska, and we'll love to get that background story here in a bit. But I think everyone would be really interested to hear about like your take on living abroad, because for those who don't know, in the Peace Corps we signed a 27-month contract. We do have vacation time, so we are able to travel a little bit during that service, but for the most part, you're living and working abroad for a little over 2 years away from your loved ones, and I can totally understand the burden that can have on some people, especially in the decision-making process. So let's start with like when you were applying to Peace Corps, what did Brooke, your fiance, and you kind of talk about as far as like what those next 2 years could potentially look like? And now that we've been here for almost 10 months, how has it shaped out? How are things just going in general? Just everything. So, but first, let's start with like when you were applying. Kind of what did that look like?
Yeah. So, really glad you asked that because I can't wait for Brooke to hear this. But so when I actually was applying to the Peace Corps, Brooke wasn't in the picture. I applied my senior year of college to a program in Ukraine. I applied a little bit late, so I didn't get accepted that time. And then after I got that under consideration rescinded, I reapplied to the Armenia Community and Youth Development Program. That's really what I was interested in doing, is not teaching English. And so when I applied to that, that was March of 2017, and Brooke was not in the picture at that point, and I met her about a month later, end of April 25th, 2017 is when I met her. And 6 weeks, first 2 weeks after we met, we both graduated from college. And then another 4 weeks after that, I got my invitation to serve. And that was a whirlwind. So the first thing I did was told my buddy to come on over and bring a case of beer with him so we could think about this. And he did just that, and we talked it over. And the next morning, I sat next to Brooke and, asked her how she felt about that. And she's been like my number one supporter of me traveling, my photography, my work in the Peace Corps, living abroad, everything. Since that day, she's definitely been number one supporter. And that's, of course, not to say that it's not hard to be over here, because it's definitely a challenge, as you said, just being away from family and loved ones, and kind of everything you really know and used to. I think it's a different experience living here than just traveling through. But like being engaged with Brooke and having her have my back, I think has been probably one of the things that has helped me most get through my service so far. And of course, I expect it to continue to be like that. Luckily, we do have that vacation time. So we're able to travel, and I've already met up with Brooke once. We went on a little vacation back in October, November, and that was a blast. Also a good excuse for her to travel, which she also loves to do. So I think it's kind of working out for both of us.
Yeah, and like, Brooke's working full time as well, so she's definitely got things back home to help keep her busy, as do you with your work here in Armenia. But what are some of the things that you guys do to just keep that contact? Do you FaceTime, Skype? How often are you keeping in touch? Because I mean, that's the beauty of technology, is that it really puts that power right at our fingertips. We're able to send a text instantly, and even though you have the time difference, it's like, you're still able to check in on the minute. And I'm glad you brought up the trip, because we're also going to talk about that in a bit. But like, how do you guys keep in touch? Like, what's something that works for you two?
I think anyone who's been in a long distance relationship will tell you just like communication is key, and we pretty much stay in contact as much as we can. Like, she's a 12-hour time difference from Armenia right now, 13 hours actually. And so, if she's not working, then she's usually asleep when I'm awake, and vice versa. So we get really 2 windows a day to talk and see what's going on and how we're doing. So there's a lot of texting. We've had Skype dates. We've binge watched Netflix together. That's been fun. Also, it was that new Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. Would recommend. Definitely scary. Watch it with someone, because it's terrifying. But no, it's just a lot of being open about what your needs are, and how you want to communicate with someone, and making it work if you want it to.
That's awesome. But I'm going to bring up that I think probably the biggest benefit of you being engaged while working here in Armenia is that you get to bypass all the Armenian females asking when you're going to get married to an Armenian. Because I don't know if there's been a week that's passed since I've been here these first 10 months that I haven't been asked, "Oh, do you have a Armenian girlfriend? Would you like one? 24, you're getting a little old. It's about time to start getting married and settle down." It's like, oh, okay. So that's probably one of the fun benefits of being engaged. You just get to bypass. Like, what? I got a girl back home. It's all good. But you mentioned you guys got to take a trip. So let's talk a bit about that. Where did you guys go? How long were you there? What kind of things were you guys doing? I mean, that's super cool that like you said, you got to take that vacation time from the Peace Corps to travel with Brooke, and you both got to go somewhere that neither of you have been before. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, so our plan was for Brooke to come to Armenia, first to like meet my host family, meet my friends, like see the people who are important in my life here in Armenia. Also just see where I live, kind of get to just like have that peek and a little bit of understanding of like what I'm going through over there or over here. And so that was really cool. And I know she really enjoyed her time in Armenia. And we were initially planning on traveling up to Georgia and spending some time in the Greater Caucasus, doing some hiking, staying in a couple lodges up there, and then exploring Georgian wine country and, of course, Tbilisi. But I had about a 3-week notice before Brooke got to Armenia that as volunteers we were barred from going up to Georgia due to potential political unrest there. So we quickly had to switch plans. Luckily, we didn't have any plane tickets bought to Georgia. You just take the train or the Marshutka up there. But we ended up going to the United Arab Emirates for 10 days. That's a pretty popular destination for Armenians. It's a cheap plane ticket and a quick flight, which is really nice. But it was kind of a hairball idea, something we just kind of threw together last minute. Both of our first times to a Islamic country, so that was surreal, especially after living in the first Christian nation and a almost 100% practicing Christian nation. But about our trip, we spent 5 days in Abu Dhabi and 5 days in Dubai. We started a trip out in Abu Dhabi, and we had a few hiccups. We didn't really know what to expect since we kind of just dove into this trip. But we still got to go see some really cool things in Abu Dhabi. The only extension of the Louvre Museum is there, and that's a beautiful building. We got to ride bikes along the beach. It's called the Corniche, and it's about 8 kilometers long, right there in the Persian Gulf. Also got to go swimming in the Persian Gulf, which was great water to go swimming in, super warm, especially after being in cold Armenia. It was nice to get out there. Probably my favorite part about Abu Dhabi was the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, or the Grand White Mosque is what a lot of people call it. Absolutely breathtaking building. We spent maybe 2.5 hours there. Could have spent another 2.5. And we didn't even go on any of the tours there. But that was a phenomenal site to go and explore. We were also able to kayak through the Eastern Mangrove National Forest or National Park down there in Abu Dhabi, which was beautiful. Our trip up in Dubai was slightly different. It was a little bit more hectic. We did not realize how spread out everything is. It really is still like a developing city. And it is surreal in so many different ways. But I mean, we got to see all the major sites. One of my favorites, actually I'll say two of my favorites. The first being the Al Fahidi Historic District, which is right along Dubai Creek. That was a beautiful part of the city, a little detached from downtown, but you get to see some of the older traditional Middle Eastern architecture, which was super beautiful. That little area has a bunch of really cute art galleries and cafes tucked away in there. And the other part of Dubai that I really liked is something we weren't even planning on doing, but we went to a butterfly garden, which is next to the Miracle Gardens in Dubai, which is the largest flower garden in the world. Unfortunately, the flower garden was under construction, so we ended up going to the next closest thing, which was the butterfly garden. There's another one of those things where we spent 2 hours there, could have spent another 2. And it's just really cool. You just walk around these greenhouses with butterflies flying around you. And it seems childish, and it was great. Besides that, it was a really cool experience to go to a country that was so different from everything that I've experienced before. I think what I've told people the most of that moment of everything being surreal hitting me is when I was swimming in the Persian Gulf. and the water's like 80 something degrees, and maybe 100 meters inshore, there's a mosque, and the call to prayer started while I was swimming out in the Gulf, and that was just a really cool moment to be in.
Yeah, I got my pen and paper out right now, so I'm going to add the UAE as well as Alaska to my must-travel destinations. Definitely sounds pretty neat. And on that call to prayer, I can definitely relate to that because I remember I had a very similar experience. I was doing a tour through the Semester at Sea study abroad program, and we were in Senegal, and the city we were in is the holy city of Tuba, and they have the oldest mosque in that region of Africa in the holy city of Tuba. And while we were in the mosque, the call to prayer happened, and to see everyone, so devoted to their religion, just to experience that was incredible. Usually what they have is like speakers, and the prayer starts coming on, and just to see everyone kind of like translucent, I don't know, and it just living in that moment it's beautiful. It's really something unique. But yeah, I mean, the UAE sounds pretty dope. I definitely want to go there, and I'm sure there's going to be other people. The butterfly place, yeah. I mean, I was like, dang, I want to see that. That sounds really neat. So, I mean, that's cool that you and Brooke got to spend that time together. And then did she just fly back right away from the UAE, or did she come back to Armenia with you for a little bit? Was it just back, come to Armenia, head to UAE, head back home?
So we did about 5 days in Armenia when she first got here, and we did all the stuff we needed to do. We went on a guided tour down to some of the big churches, the really beautiful churches here in Armenia. Saw both my host families, took her up to the village that I live in northern Shirak, Mars. And then we went and did our thing in the UAE, and we came back and we just had a couple bum days in Yerevan, which was really nice. Went to the museum here, ordered in a lot of really good food, and just kind of hung out before she had to go back home to get back to work.
That's really cool. So we are now entering the dead of winter here in Armenia, which is an absolutely terrifying thought because it's like just, a frozen tundra here with all the high mountains. You're at it, like anywhere you go in country, you're not going to get anywhere below like 3,500 meters above sea level. So you're pretty high up there. So you're naturally going to have a little bit more colder weather, colder seasons. But like you live in the part of Armenia that is well known as like the Siberia of Armenia. There's just like so much snow that comes in, and you're gonna get trapped at your site for who knows how long because there'll be so much snow that you can't take the roads, and there's gonna be no public transportation. So like, what do these next couple months look like for you? Because I know me, I'm gonna be sitting inside in my bed just trying to stay warm for the next couple months. But like, what's this winter looking like? What kind of work do you have going on with the Peace Corps? And then maybe like, because we have that time right now, or like, do you have plans for the upcoming summer? What does that look like?
So glad that you brought up that my village, Amasya, is referred to part of the Siberia of Armenia. I actually got blocked in at site for the first time this past week. It went great. I wasn't leaving anyway, so it wasn't really an issue. But yeah, that was the first big blizzard that came through, which I could definitely feel inside my apartment. So it was a little chilly, but we made it through. We're here now in the capital, which is nice. But no, I'm actually excited for the next couple months. The winter solstice is over, so we're gaining daylight. And I think we're going to start having, sunnier days come end of January and start in February. So be able to get out there and start hiking again, which I'm super excited about. Especially up there in Amasya, we're at a pretty high elevation. So when the skies are clear, the skies are super clear, and that sun is pretty warm. As far as the summer, got more hiking planned. I am one of the project managers for a Peace Corps program called Border to Border. And what we do is the first 3 weeks of June, there's a team of us, as you know, that we hike in remote parts of Armenia with the goal of presenting environmental education to these more rural areas, and presenting it in a non-formal and engaging way. So some of these kids that may not have the access or opportunity to learn about environmental issues in their communities or in their regions are exposed to those issues because those are super important. But coming up in April and May, we're going to start hiking those routes, making sure that they exist like the maps say they exist. And just getting ready for the big walk in June.
And just to clarify, Alex says that because I am also a part of that border to border team. I'm one of the route coordinators for the central region. The program split into 3 separate regions: north, central, and south. And we have to create the routes, and then these guys that like their admin team kind of overlooks it, makes sure everything checks out, and then like Alex said, we're going to go and do those hikes, which I'm super stoked for as well, because that's pretty much what I'm looking forward to. It's similar type of scheduling, just getting things ready for B2B and getting out and hiking. That's and that's one thing I'm super fortunate about being here in Armenia, is that growing up in Iowa, I never had that opportunity really, unless I went to Colorado or something. But like just being in my home state, there's really no like mountain hiking opportunities, so I'm taking full advantage of that. And to do it in regards to like something that I'm passionate about, which is like preserving, conserving the environment, is just an added bonus. Being able to educate students here about the effects on the environment and the things that we can do to help improve like our carbon footprint and stuff like that. So yeah, border to border, it's gonna be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. But you're not going to be on my hike because you're going to be hiking the northern region, right?
That is to be decided. But I do live in the north, so it does make sense for me to be one of the ones that's hiking up there. But I would like to add, I am super excited about your route. Matthew here actually showed it to me last night. He's clocked it at 165 kilometers. And that's without zigs and zags, so should add up to be a little bit more than that. But it looks like a really fun route, and going through probably the most remote part of Armenia and into a nature reserve in central Armenia there that has recently been where some Caucasian leopards have been sighted, which is an endangered species of leopard that exists in this region. So who knows, maybe we'll get lucky and see some of those, right?
Cool. I definitely love doing these type of things, these type of podcasts, because you get to know people even better. We talked about things that, obviously like border to border and you being engaged in stuff. And like, I knew about all of that, but always learning something new, which is why I personally enjoy doing it. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me here in Yerevan, the capital. We're actually going to go shopping here in a bit now. And then we got a Peace Corps volunteers pickup basketball game that we're hoping we can cream some people at. But thanks for taking the time and to talk with us. Yeah.
Thanks for having me talk with you, Matthew. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to see where you take this podcast, and with all the traveling you've done and all the really interesting people that you've met. And I mean, you met a bunch of interesting people at our hostel last night. So I'm really, really happy that you're doing this and see where you're taking it. So thanks, man. Happy to be a part of it.
thank you so much to Alex once again for taking the time to sit down with me and to let him into your ears today. I thought he did an absolutely awesome job talking about, photography, living and working abroad, especially while in a committed relationship, and just like how like his and my Peace Corps experiences might be a little bit different. But it was fun to listen to him and some of the things that he's interested in, and I hope you guys found so as well. And if you're interested in some of the photography work that he does, I've gone ahead and uploaded the links directly to this page. So you can just search it right on my website, whereintheworldismatt.com, under the podcast episode tab. And then I also touched on a little bit earlier about Semester at Sea. And if you want to check out more about that program, if you're a college student potentially looking at doing an untraditional study abroad opportunity, I've also put that link up for semesteratsea.org. Now, early in the show, I mentioned finding this idea of a theme for the new year. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit more before our time is up today. And I mentioned that my theme or my word for this year is persistence. And the reason why I picked that word is because not only just this year, but so many times in our life, we're going to have moments where we have to make a hard decision or we're going to be faced with challenges. And if we want to overcome those types of barriers and difficulties, we have to be very persistent in doing so. So that is an example of why I picked that word, especially with living and working abroad or just traveling in general. You're going to overcome that more often than not. You're going to see times you're going to have to be persistent over the times that you're in a comfort zone. So, go ahead, take some time for yourself. And if you don't want to do, the traditional idea of what your New Year's resolution thing is, go ahead and maybe find like a topic of conversation or a word that will help you to achieve those things that you want to do throughout this upcoming year. And maybe it's something you'll find you'll enjoy and you'll continue to do in future years. And I'd love to hear from you guys what that is that you come to. After Alex and I finished recording this segment, he had some time to think about this whole theme concept idea, and he wanted me to let you guys know that he's going to follow the theme of growth for the coming year. And the reason for that is that kind of like persistence, where we're going to be faced with a lot of challenges and you have to overcome them in life in general, but especially when living, working abroad and traveling, there's going to be a lot of unknown things and a lot of unexpected outcomes and results. So taking these learning opportunities and growing from them is such an important thing to do. So that is what Alex said he was going to be focusing on for the upcoming year, is focusing on growth and just learning more and improving on himself and continuing to try to be the best that he can be. So one thing I want to do is definitely keep in contact with all of you who are listening. So if I ever propose a question like this, feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email. Let me know, hey, I like this about your podcast, or hey, this is what you could be better on. Or if you ever got topics, go ahead and shoot them my way. So any of that, you can do so by sending me an email at whereintheworldismatt@hotmail.com. And I'd love to hear if you go ahead and take this challenge of finding like a New Year's theme. What is it? Why did you pick it? And how do you plan on carrying that out throughout the year? I definitely look forward to hearing from you guys and seeing what you think about this very first podcast. So again, I will be uploading one podcast per month. This month was a little bit different, having it start in the middle of the month, but the first Friday of every month, now starting in February, expect to see a new upload. Sometimes I will have guest speakers just like I had with Alex, and we'll cover various topics of conversation. And I'm super excited about that because it allows for not only me to learn a little bit more about the friends and people who have had a positive impact in my life, but it also introduces you guys to these people as well, allows you to connect with them and maybe find some different perspectives on these topics. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. So we have come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for joining me this time. And I'll look forward to talking with you guys again next month. And thank you for letting me into your ears. So, this has been the very first episode of the Where in the World podcast. Have an awesome end of the month, and we'll see you again in February.